G'day everybody, welcome back to another episode of Crafted by Tim. I sure do love a nice cup of coffee. You know what else loves a nice cup of coffee? Damascus steel. And today, I'm going to be talking a little bit about etching Damascus. I know I have done a video on this in the past, but I want to revisit the subject because someone asked me in the comment section, does this actually do anything? And is it actually worth the effort of doing a coffee etch? Yes, it is. And I responded with that, but at that point in time, I had no idea just how much coffee etching actually does. So today, we're going to be doing a little bit more on the subject of coffee etching. And we've got a little bit of a science experiment for you. Let's first of all talk about the Damascus. This Damascus I am so excited about. This is a piece of explosion pattern Damascus. This is my first ever attempt at mosaic Damascus, and I am so thrilled with how this turned out. This is amazing to me. I've never done anything where I was actually chasing a pattern. I wasn't just like stacking up a billet, grinding through. This is being methodical and planning out my forging, and it actually paid off so well. And I'm so happy that this actually worked out. Unfortunately, the billet that I ended up with was not very big. I'm sure that will lead to problems later on in the future, but this is going to work perfectly for today's video. Now first, just talk quickly about the Damascus. So it's an explosion type mosaic Damascus, and it's made up of 3 different materials. First of all, 1520, second, 1084, and third, 1075. And the way that I alternated was 1520, 1084, 1520, 1075, 1520, 1084, so on and so forth. The reason why I decided to do it that way is because I wanted this to be an experiment for whomever decides to watch this. That way you can all get some kind of information out of it. It doesn't matter whether or not you use 1075 or 1084, you'll still see somewhat of the same contrast. Now let's talk prep work. So each piece of these were cut off from the mother billet, rounded over the edges just a little bit, and then I ground on them for a bit, going up to 400 grit. I then took all of them and I threw them into the forge and hardened them all. There's 2 reasons for doing this. First reason is because I want this to be a simulation of how you might etch a knife. And of course a knife was going to be hardened by the time you go to etch it. The other reason is that you just generally get better contrast. So it doesn't really matter whether or not you're making rings, you're making jewelry or anything like that. I would always strongly recommend that you hardened whatever Damascus that you're using before you etch them. I then tempered the Damascus using a blowtorch, and I quickly realized that that blowtorch is actually pretty powerful, and it just melted straight through that aluminium. That's pretty cool. And then I hand sanded it to 800 grit, followed by a quick etch, and already you can really start to see that pattern, and I was so thrilled about this. But of course, if you take your thumb or your finger and you rub it on the steel, it very quickly breaks up that contrast and you don't get as much of a clean result. And that leads me to this point in time. How do you get from no contrast to a bit of a better contrast? And that's where the coffee comes in. I have 5 pieces of steel and I have 4 different types of coffee. So we're gonna have one as a control. First thing that I did was that I took a little bit of 2000 grit sandpaper and I just lightly touched the surfaces. The only reason to do this is just to make sure that you have nice clean layers to start to work with. So next up, we're going to take each one of these types of coffees and we're going to put a full tablespoon of each different type of coffee into each one of these jars, and then we're going to fill it up with almost boiling water. I'm not going to use boiling water because these are Kmart jars and I have a feeling that they might shatter. I suppose I could probably warm these up, but I don't really have enough time. And then we're going to let these etch for an hour. Now normally when I do coffee etching, I'll let it etch for a really long time. What I have noticed is that you will actually begin to start to see some kind of result within an hour. So hopefully an hour is all we'll need. Alright, an hour's passed. Let's have a look at all of these and see which one turned out the best. First up, the Mikado. Okay, so this here is our control. Let's take out the Mikado. Now the Mikado is actually the coffee that I used to use for this very task. The reason why I used it is because we already had it in the house. But as you can see here, it's actually turned out quite alright. Got some nice dark colors. You can see that there's quite a bit of contrast there. That's because this one's high spots have been polished, so we're going to polish the high spots on this one using the same 2000 grit. Okay. And in respect to the original, it's definitely darker, but not by much. So let's have a look at the next one. And next up we have the Nescafe Gold Original. And this is the second coffee that I ever used for coffee etching. And this is actually what inspired me to do this video. It's because I realized how much of a difference there is when you use different types of coffee. Without taking off the top layer, got a little bit of interesting color to it. Kind of like that. Now, unfortunately, you can't see how much of a difference there is very well on the camera, but there is definitely quite a nice contrast there. Very cool. You can actually almost see the different types of steel. You can see at the bases there, where my, like this dark line, you can see that that's the 1084, and that one there, slightly lighter, that's the 1075. But very cool. From here on out, everything is new to me. Nescafe Blend 43. One of the worst types of coffee that I've ever had, and I'm proud to say it. I know it's Australian, but this is horrible. Also, I didn't realize, but I grabbed a decaf by accident. I should have grabbed regular, but we'll see. It's definitely darker. It's darker than the other ones I've seen. Really hard to try and get these to both face the light in the same way so that it can be picked up on the camera. There you go. It's a little bit darker, not too much of a difference though. So it's a little bit darker. It's definitely darker than the original, but how much I could actually compare it to the other ones, can't really say. I'll have a look at all of them together at the end. Last but not least, we have the Coles brand Original Coffee. This I really hope works out really well because it is the cheapest coffee that I could find at Coles. I think $3 for this massive jar. It's like 200 grams. However, I have a feeling that it's also going to taste really gross, so if it doesn't work very well, I'm going to have 200 grams of coffee that I don't know what to do with. Once again, getting that bit of patina. That's kind of cool. A little bit of blue in there too. Just very slightly. You can barely see it. Keep in mind also that if you're planning on doing this, that this will work better for Damascus that has a tighter grain pattern. If your pattern is really far spread out, it won't work as well. Just like right up in that corner. It's just like nice and blue. Unfortunately, it doesn't look like, well actually no. I keep looking at this through the camera and I'm not seeing how much of a difference there actually is. But you can see it really well in real life that this one is like much more sort of faded and this one has a much brighter contrast. So now that we've compared them all to the control, I would like to have a look at all of them with their respective counterparts. Feels like I'm trying to do a seance or something. Okay, so after staring at this for like maybe 10 minutes or so, I've decided that I can't tell enough of a difference between them all. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna refill the jars with hot water again. I've put in some more coffee and I'm gonna leave these in them up until I get home from work, which will be in about 7 to 8 hours, something like that. This should hopefully give me a much better idea as to whether or not this is going to work. I was really hoping for a more immediate result, but can't always have everything that we want. So I'm going to put these back in the jars and we're going to see what sort of result we get when I get home.
12 o'clock midnight.
So this is actually very interesting. First of all, I thought that this was going to be very like straightforward. This was going to be pretty cut and clear which one wins. But to be honest, if I took all 4 of these, put them in a bag, shook them around a bit, I wouldn't be able to tell the difference between one type of coffee or another. And in fact, I probably wouldn't even be able to tell the difference of which one actually has better contrast. I think it just goes to show though that you don't need anything in particular. That being said, you may not very well be able to use anything on the market. And to be fair, maybe if I had the water at a different temperature, this might not have worked as well. I know in Moccona I've definitely had trouble with getting a decent result in the past. However, a lot of my patterns have also been very large, stuff like this. This is a recent one that I finished up, and this is actually the knife. Can you focus? Yeah. This is actually the knife that started this whole idea, because I etched this first in Moccona, and then I had troubles. I can't remember what exactly happened, but then I was like, screw it, I'll just use whatever I have floating around in my camping bag. I had the Nescafe Gold, and almost instantaneously I had a significantly better result, and I was like, wow. And then trying to switch back between the two, I found that the Nescafe worked better. That was obviously not a completely fair test for one reason or another. Probably because I don't even remember what I did. In this much more fair, but not entirely fair, test, you can actually sort of start to see that it doesn't really matter so much about the coffee, it's about the method. Provided that you are using enough coffee, your water is hot enough, which I've had problems with in the past. Quick disclaimer, do not put boiling water or very hot water into a glass jar, as I ended up losing 2 jars during this experiment, pouring in hot water into them and they just cracked. This isn't entirely fair. This isn't to say that if you use any 4 of these it'll always work, and this isn't to say that any coffee will always work. It's more about the method than it is about the coffee. My hypothesis was completely false. You do not get enough of a result for this to have warranted this experiment. It feels kind of stupid to say, you know, I just wasted an entire day doing this, and I've wasted like maybe 60 grams of Damascus, because I did definitely learn something from this. Like, just looking at it, I'll probably switch to either the Gold, Nescafe Gold, or the Coles brand. This has definitely been an eye-opening experience. I hope you guys learned something from this as well. I'm getting very tired, and I'm not being able to speak properly, so I'm going to call it there for today. I hope this was educational for you all, and I will see you all in the next episode. One more thing that I wanted to add to the end of this was the fact that I have got a little bit more of that billet left to cut up and then do something with. I'm not entirely sure what it is that I want to do yet. What I do have, however, is one billet that has already been stacked up and forged welded together, and I've actually forged a knife out of it. However, I'm not going to show you guys yet because it's not done yet, so I'm going to show you guys at the end of the next video. If you want to see it earlier, there'll probably be a post on my YouTube channel, and there'll also be a post on my Instagram, so if you want to check that out, at Craft by Tim. Yeah. Anyway, I'll see you all very shortly. Oh, other big news, I have something big planned. These damn ducks. Get out the pool. It's chlorinated water. Oh, I just pooped. Anyway, so big news coming soon. I don't want to say too much about it just yet because it may or may not happen, but I'm really excited about it. So stay tuned. I'll see you all very shortly. In the meantime, do remember to stay safe, happy crafting, and as always, cheers.